Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Just Make It Pretty podcast. Today, we are talking about the gap that happens between pretty pictures and real data. And I have a special guest with us today that's going to talk about why static renderings are no longer enough in the home building industry and how connected data actually builds trust and what's next for our digital home sales. So I'm really excited to get into it. Welcome to the Just Make It Pretty podcast, the slightly unhinged marketing podcast for home builders and beyond. I'm your host, Sarah Haynes, also known as the Pixel Wizard, and my goal is to tackle the tough stuff that goes in behind the scenes in marketing and offer actionable tips, creative insights, and a little bit of humor to spark some creativity. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get started. So my special guest today is Conor Sedam. He's the Director of Customer and Partner Marketing at Higharc. And I'm really excited to have him on because we're going to talk about all the cool things that Higharc does. And I'm just really excited to learn more. Conor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Let's dive right in. I'd love to hear how you got into this space and what you do over there at Higharc.
Yeah, how I got into this space. I started, if there's like military brats, I'm like a home building brat. I live outside of Detroit because I moved to Detroit because my dad got a job with Pulte Homes, which back in the day was headquartered in Detroit. We still don't recognize here in Detroit that they've moved to Atlanta. We just act like that didn't happen. But out of college, I actually started working for Pulte Homes as a customer service manager. And I had a variety of jobs with production and high-end custom home builders, construction director, purchasing manager, got built my own sales and selections tool at one point for a builder, did a little bit of everything. And about 4.5 years ago, I actually connected with an old friend from my first job all the way back at Pulte, Ed Kubiak, who had posted this role about a job at a company I'd never heard of called Higharc, and just sounded like a new way to try to solve the problems that all of us in home building have been banging our heads against the wall for a long time. So I come from the field side of home building, and now that I work at Higharc, I try to bring that knowledge in a marketing sense and make sure that the message that Higharc is sending can really relate to home builders. And it's one of the things I think is special about Higharc is it's not a software company that decided to just make a product and try to shoehorn it into home building. It's a product that was designed from scratch for production home builders. And so that's made the big difference for me is, okay, I'm not changing industries. I'm helping this company that wants to be a part of the solution better understand some of the problems that home builders deal with.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I said as we were getting started here today, I've done a little bit of research on what you guys do at Higharc, and you've got a lot of products that I feel like really do solve those problems that a lot of home builders face. I think it's going to be a really great conversation today. So we're focusing mainly on how like builders love their renderings and their floor plans and their virtual tours and all of that. But the problems pop up when like those don't come with accurate data, and these tools can become misleading in a way with price changes and option changes. And we want to make sure that these tools that our buyers love are actually showing what they're going to get. So there can be a disconnect there. And I've seen that happen with builders that I've worked with. And it's that we don't actually offer that color anymore, but it's just still in there and it's not great. So I'd love to hear your kind of take on that and where you feel like these gaps are for home building.
Yeah, I actually have the worst and most embarrassing example of that is as a construction director, I built, or we built, I guess it wasn't all my fault, but a lot of it was, we built a house that was supposed to be a ranch and accidentally included a bonus room, which the cost to us, just the net cost was $35,000. And that was because we had recently, instead of having two separate models with two separate names, one house was just the house with the bonus room, and then the other house had a separate name. We decided, oh, we'll combine these and make the bonus room an option. Some things got messed up in the selections process because we didn't communicate that change quick enough. And in the interim, the name didn't get changed properly, and we ended up building the house with the bonus room. And we thought it was pretty bad, but I'm sure the customer will be pumped. Like they're getting a free bonus room because all we could do is say sorry. And we actually lost the deal. And I think the customer was just so dumbfounded that we could make such a big mistake that he was like, if they can screw that up, what else can they screw up? And so even when it's to your benefit, sometimes I think those, whether it's a pinprick or a bomb, when the expectations don't line up with what you actually deliver to the customer, it puts that little seed of doubt in their mind, and it takes 10 deposits to make up for one withdrawal. And I really do think from the time you make that first withdrawal, it just gets harder and you got to make more and more deposits to try to overcome that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard to get trust back once you've lost it with someone. Personally, I would have been really thrilled about an extra bonus room, but I do understand that thought process where it's wow, like they really just like didn't care enough or whatever. I hope that situation worked out in the end and you were able to sell that home again.
Yeah, we did, but man, it was embarrassing. And I will say we learned a valuable lesson, and that was 15 years ago. But when I started to look at what Higharc was doing and the idea that you could make a change and it will immediately ripple through all of your departments, and that sales information, the 3D model of that house, that customer would have seen, at least they would have seen it and said, this is weird. I didn't want a bonus room. This
Mm-hmm.
3D visual of my house has a bonus room. What's up with that? We would have been able to correct that problem. And we see that a lot, not just with customers, but when builders are designing new product, they're able to anticipate where there might be a design issue or a layout that visually just looks a little different than they thought it would when they can see it in 3D in a dollhouse view. We've seen a couple times where we've identified roof slopes and roof intersections that don't actually work in real life, that the builder would have only figured out the hard way doing it in the field for the first time. So it's fun to be a part of that, and to I feel like I'm still making up for accidentally building that bonus room. So
So I guess my follow-up question for that is one of my favorite questions. It's just why do you think that this gap exists and like builders lean on like these static visuals alone instead of trying to tie them into their whole ecosystem?
yeah, I don't think it's really anybody's fault, but until pretty recently, we didn't have the technology to do it. 5 years ago, even you couldn't have a 3D interactive model that would run on a laptop that you could look at over Wi-Fi. So I think now we're in a transition, and it was accelerated a little bit by COVID, where everybody started to have to be forced to look at things online. And I think that kind of changed the buyer psyche and how, even more so than just millennials and buyers getting younger, we all started to look at more things online when we couldn't go look at things in person. And I think Hire happened to be in the right place at the right time when that shift started to occur. And so the why maybe isn't a builder's fault, but now why doesn't everybody have it? A lot of the tools we're using are 20th century tools. We're still using design programs that were designed last century. We're still using isolated estimating programs that you have to bring a model in and then do all of your takeoffs in, as opposed to having all of that data be connected. It's in a lot of ways we're using switchboard technology when you had to call somebody and then they had to pull the plug out of here and plug it in over there in order to get you through to your call, instead of just I pick up the phone and I hit send and I can talk to somebody in Japan if I want to.
Yeah.
I think we're getting there, and Hierarch is not the only one that's a part of that, but I do think if builders, whether you're doing design, estimating, purchasing, construction, sales, if you're not looking at technology and solutions to help connect the siloed aspects of your business, you're going to be continue to fall further and further behind.
Yeah. We live in really exciting times though, because I do feel like there's so much technology that's being created right now that solves so many problems for builders and even just businesses out in our world. Everything is literally changing right now. And I think it's a perfect time to jump on these things because there is a lot new and like you're going to be at the forefront of having this type of technology. And I feel like buyers are seeing it everywhere that they're at. I have had several guests on the podcast talk about how like Amazon and all of these companies, the experience that buyers are having outside of home building has changed so much that now that's being pulled into what they're expecting when they buy a home. But I think that the biggest thing is still that they expect honesty, accuracy. They want to know what's happening. They really just want more information about what that process is going to look like and what they're going to get at the end, and that they're looking to build that trust. So I'm very excited about the future and all of these new things popping up because I feel like that's going to be just become easier and easier.
Yeah, I started at the end too, right? I started in customer success with Pulte. So I was at the cascading end of all of the upstream problems in a builder's workflow. And sometimes I think it's easy to forget that people are still building these houses out in the world. The plumber's still going to show up on the job site and install PEX, and the framer is still going to swing a hammer and put the roof on your house. And these tools all help, hopefully, help those people have an easier time focusing on what they're really good at, as opposed to fighting fires or fixing problems that we frankly cause for them. So I think sometimes I don't go on the field as much anymore, and I think, oh man, we're doing something cool, but is it really connected to making trades lives better? But I think if you really think about it, it is totally connected, and any little difference we can make in our own sector is actually going to make, theoretically, hopefully, make that plumber's life easier too. So shout
Yeah,
out to all the trades out there. I
for
haven't
sure.
forgotten about you.
They don't get enough credit, I do feel like. We don't talk about them enough, and they're the ones actually doing the real work out there. That's another benefit that I feel like even us in marketing, we're like looking at this and we're like, oh, this is going to be great for our buyer, but it's going to ripple effect through so many different departments and so many different ways that we build the home.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you think about like the data side of this and you're connecting like your renderings and your data, and it's going to change how like your company has the perception of how you build homes, but also your buyers. Can you talk about that a little bit? Or like how where there's like those overlooked areas of where this data is at?
Yeah, when so we say that Higharc is the source of truth for your product data. So we've got great systems, HubSpot, which is your CRM data, and you've got systems like Hyphen, which is your ERP data, but you don't really have a system that consolidates and brings all of your product data into one place. You might use Revit, and then you might to design your house, and then you might use Bluebeam, and then you might use Excel for actual field scheduling. And there's all these different components, and what is at the heart of every home builder's operation is the product they're building. And if you can get back to that source of data, I really believe that's the North Star. If you can get that right, it makes everything downstream easier. What that eventually should translate to for a sales team is there's less, let me check on that. There's less firefighting because a price changed, because a structural option isn't available anymore, because the exterior color selections changed. Ideally, what you want to be able to do is log in to a platform. And when
Mhm.
you log in, know that the information that's in front of you is up to date and accurate. And the only way you can do that is if that information is always in sync with the product data, which is at the core of your operation. So there can't be somebody running between departments and going, okay, hey, purchasing, we made an update to the size of our sunroom, and so we need to reprice it. Hey, now we need to change that in the selections process to make sure when selections goes through, they tell them how much the sunroom costs. That all has to happen in sync. It doesn't have to happen in sync, but what you lose is agility and lose the ability to react to the market. You lose the ability to react quicker to your competition. And so a lot of builders at Higharc are focused on how can you go to market in a community faster? There's a lot of time savings to be had there. And then the end result of that is how can a salesperson move through a sales cycle faster? Data they have is always up to date and in sync. They don't have to go back and check on a price for a customer. They don't have to go back and make sure. Oh, sorry about that. Apparently, I'm supposed to go pick up my kids from school. They'll be fine. You don't have to go and check on all those things when your customer is coming in with a pre-configured house with all of the structural options already picked out. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
speed up your sales process no matter what. Um, you go into the department store, you probably already know what size shoes you wear, and you probably have a pretty good idea of what brand you want and what kind of colors you like. So even if you're not picking out everything about your house, we're certainly not trying to replace salespeople with Higharc. We're trying to allow salespeople to do what they're best at, which is manage relationships and guide the customer and give salespeople the tools they need to help get through that process faster and frankly also ultimately be able to make more money. If the customer can see what those options are, really understand them in 3D, they're more likely to buy them.
Mm-hmm. There's a fear about how technology is going to replace us in our jobs. And personally, I don't think that is true. So I love what you said about it's basically just enhancing your ability to be able to do your job. And I love that. What do you think are some of the things that builders can keep in mind when they're trying bring in new technology to solve some of these problems? Or maybe what do they get wrong when they're trying to tech their way out?
Yeah, change is hard no matter what. And I think some people think oh, we'll just buy this system and it'll be a magic bullet.
Mm,
It's when I buy a book on, I have my hockey jersey in the background. I've coached hockey for a long time. I have admittedly multiple books on the shelf about how to coach hockey better that I bought. Buying the book does not put the information into your brain, right?
yeah.
Buying the tool won't fix problems in your process and won't fix the way your teams are prepared for change. And that really comes down to company culture, having the right people, having people that are open-minded. Everybody who's good at something is good at something because they do it a certain way and it's worked for them. So anytime you're asking somebody to do something a different way, even if it's a better way, there's going to be some hesitancy there. So I think having a real clear purpose, just to the point we made earlier, like we're not trying, the goal is to not replace you here. The goal is to, whatever motivates this person, the goal is to help you make more money, or the goal is to make this selections process easier for you and the customer. The goal is to help you get home at 5 o'clock more often. Focusing all of those things, buying a piece of software can't solve those problems. So it's really important that, especially with a tool like Higharc that really affects so many aspects of a home builder's business, that you really get everybody on board and everybody's involved so they're part of the solution and they're at least willing to give it a try and see it hopefully makes sense.
That's so interesting. I'm connecting what you're saying in my brain because I'm like, that's really a culture shift. And in order to make that culture shift in your company, you really do have to understand what's important to all of your people. Like you said, this technology is going to help you get home to your kids faster. And at the end of the day, like being able to connect this solution to actually what matters to your team is something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about.
Yeah, I think part of that too is I said like when I started out in customer service for Pulte, I just everything was construction's fault and construction said everything was sales fault and sales said oh everything is purchasing and estimating's fault, they got the pricing wrong in this, and it just it goes up the chain and up the chain. And there's a tool like Higharc, it really puts everybody in the same boat. And yeah, mistakes sure are still going to happen, but it, it won't fix rowing in different directions. You've got to have that built into your culture as a baseline, but it will help everybody row faster and be more in sync with each other.
Yeah. So how do you keep that? How do you communicate to your team that this is that benefit and it's not going to be overwhelming? I think the overwhelm piece is really what a lot of people are worried about because yes, you're changing their process, but like that is going to like really hold them back, I guess is the fear. So how do you dispel that?
Yeah, it's frankly, I think if you're going to look at a tool, even if you've already selected what the tool is,
Mm,
ask for feedback from your teams on what they would be looking for. And then hopefully, if you've already selected the tool, you've selected a tool that aligns with that. But really understanding, we do this a lot at Higharc, is understanding what the customer's needs are. In this case, understanding what your employees are really looking for. And if the problem is construction doesn't get the structural option changes in time, okay, what's the real reason for that problem? It's probably not just that somebody doesn't feel like getting them to you in time. There's probably some systematic thing that we can solve. So aligning for outcomes before you start, I think is really critical and really important. And like I said, I think one thing I've been at Higharc for 4.5 years now, and one thing that we've really always stuck to is is having our customers be involved in improving the product, really listening and trying to make sure that the product stays aligned. So hopefully that helps teams with onboarding. Do we always drop everything we're doing and build exactly the thing that this one specific customer wants? Sorry, I can't say that. But
yeah.
I do think there is a difference between giving someone the tool and saying, this is the tool you need,
Mhm.
versus giving someone the opportunity to tell you what type of tool would make their life easier. I think that's why Higharc has been successful with a lot of builders is it was built for builders and continues to be impacted by builders.
You really do have to choose good vendor partners. And there's great ones in our industry that do listen, and I always want to shout them out because that's really so important to making sure that this solution is going to be effective for you because you could have the coolest technology in the entire world and if no one's using it, no one understands it, like it's pointless. Like you're going to just throw a bunch of money at it. I definitely agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, and get and champions too, right? I think of Emily Fiegel's Tim O'Brien Homes. She was somebody when we started working with Tim O'Brien, who's a sales manager, who I was just like, I want to move to Wisconsin and work for Emily. Like, I'll follow her. I'll go to battle for her. So developing champions, figure out who those champions are in the organization, in your organization, and having them lead the charge and be early adopters can make a big difference as well.
For sure. I've gotten the chance to talk to some of those like early adopters in companies, and they're very inspiring. And I love that they're there. But the one thing that I hear the most is my builder's behind. And so now I'm trying to add all these new things and I'm trying to like help them innovate, but like they haven't innovated. Maybe they're in like a legacy company or something where there just hasn't been a lot of innovation. What would be your advice to someone in that position to catch up or like to make that first step?
Yeah, I think looking at where your product data lives and how many places it lives in. Hierarch or tools like it don't replace your ERP or don't replace your CRM, but there's a lot of data that you can consolidate and stop having to repetitively input or repetitively move between departments. So
Mhm.
that requires obviously a mental shift, and we already talked about change being hard, but really look at what the process is and how data about a home moves between the departments in your operation. And whether it's, I talk to a lot of builders and we just say, hey, Hierarch, the somebody signs on to Hierarch. We don't have one meeting with them and they just go, great, let's do it. We take a deep dive with that builder and we have solutions consultants that have been in the industry for as long as I have or longer. And we want to make sure it's a good fit and we want to make sure we understand the business. And I always tell people like, even if you don't end up signing up, going through a process like that and really auditing and looking at, okay, how good is our process for designing a new home? And what are the steps? And what non-value adding steps can we remove? And then when it's time for that home to go to estimating, like how long does that take? And what are the steps? And what non-value adding processes can we remove? If nothing else, there are probably some easy pieces of low-hanging fruit that you can go, okay, yeah, we've always done this, but do we really need to do this? And can we eliminate some of those? And I think whether it's Higharc or any other system, getting people from different departments in a room together where there's nothing's off limits, blue sky, ideas, how can we do this differently can make a big difference. Even if you don't do any of them, frankly, sometimes we just need to vent too and just say, hey, this sucks. And if there's nothing we can do about it, okay, at least people know and I feel heard.
Yeah. I love this. I love how basically communication and just improving your internal culture is really the key to all of this innovation being successful.
Yeah, I was just so critical. The best builders that we work with, I don't think it's a coincidence, are also the most fun and the ones I want to hang out with. That's not just, oh my gosh, what are the chances? That's because they've built a culture and you can tell when you go into a builder and they like spending time with each other. Then when there's an issue, they're they want to solve it for each other, not in spite of each other or not by working around another person. Once you
Yeah.
fix that, then you add in some technology and then you're off to the races.
We spend a lot of time thinking about like our buyer's experience and how they're going to perceive everything. But really, if your employees are happy and your employees are working well together, that's going to trickle down to your buyers. They're going to feel that as well when they go into the sales office. Like you can feel it when you go into a room and you're like, yeah, these two people in here hate each other. It's just not a good vibe. And so having that internal culture is really going to affect everything from there on.
There's a guilty pleasure. Sometimes after a hockey game, I go to Taco Bell because it's late and I'm hungry. And there's one Taco Bell around me in Detroit. And I will go out of my way, even if it's farther, to go to this one Taco Bell because they are so nice. And I don't know what's going on in that Taco Bell, but they have it figured out. And you can go there at 2:30 in the morning and it's like their first day working there and they're just happy. And it sometimes that just makes all the difference. And those are the home building teams that you see that are the most successful, I think, are like that too. They're happy because I don't know. I should do an investigation into that Taco Bell and figure out what their secret is.
You should.
They also
We-
don't like sometimes if you say, "Oh, I want a packet of sauce," and they throw 30. I say, "I want two fire sauces," and they put two in there. And I appreciate that attention to detail. I'm sorry, we've gotten way off track here.
They listen. No, it's good. I love a tangent. I think though, like what you're saying is that they listen and they actually care about what they're doing, or at least that's how it's perceived by you when you go there. And I would love to know, is there one person inside that Taco Bell that's just cheery all the time and that's what's
Maybe
making it? Yeah.
spreading the unicorn dust. I don't know, but
Yeah. Okay, so if we go back to our technology topic, what excites you the most? This is one of my favorite questions. What excites you the most about this space and like what we've talked about today? And I guess it could be about culture too, but in the next 2 or 3 years, what's exciting you?
yeah, the how many of these have you done in the past 6 months where somebody says AI? So I'm not going to say AI, but
Yeah.
just going to say the ability to use AI-based tools to speed up some of the things that we're doing is already a lot faster than a traditional way of putting a home plan in. The renders you get out of Higharc are because they're connected directly back to our design studio models are already a lot faster than a traditional rendering house would be able to. We're able to turn renders around in days instead of weeks. I think we're going to see that come down to hours. And then I've even seen some examples already of instant, and sometimes a random cactus is coming through the roof or something. So, again, I don't think AI is coming for all of our jobs, but I think just like anything else is It's going to be a tool that allows sales professionals and frankly everybody in every department to deliver a better experience for a customer. So as a salesperson, if I can render that three-car garage version of the house with a desert background, and then I can say, oh, actually, we decided we're not going to live in Phoenix. We're going to move to Detroit. I can render the two-car version of that house in the suburbs of Detroit and give people just that immediate feedback. I think that's going to be really cool. And I'm excited about the ability to continue to shorten the time frame that it takes for home builders to take on these kind of systems. And I think that's where AI is going to make a big difference is just right now, if you want to make a major change in your operation, you've got to, if you want to take on a new ERP, it's probably going to take you a year or 2 years to implement that. And I think those time frames are going to start to shorten a lot. And we're going to get to the same outcomes. We're just going to get there a lot faster, which I think will make a big difference.
Yeah, time is money, right? Anytime we can go faster, the better.
Yeah, I think the more we can make the delineations between visualization and sales and
Mhm.
production and design disappear and make them all into one thing through technology with culture as that basis, everything's gonna be okay.
Yes, I do understand the people that have some anxiety about these new tools. And we've all been through the horror stories of trying to implement something that just did not go well or was not a good fit. So there's definitely legitimacy to how people feel about these things. But I think I would agree with you on the like that there's so many exciting new technologies coming out and the way that AI is changing things and to be able to be here now and to be at the front of it is a very exciting place because we're going to see our industry change so much in the next 5 years that I can't wait to look back on on where we are now and be like, oh my gosh, remember when it was so hard.
Yeah. And the key there is if you put bad data into AI, you get bad results out of AI, right? That's where I think hopefully tools like Higharc and other tools are going to make a difference in terms of the speed and the continuity and the quality of the data that we can input into these tools. And that's just going to increase the quality of what we get out.
For sure. So if any of our listeners would like to get more information about Higharc or possibly connect with you, where would they do that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn once in a while, every day. I don't know. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me or go to higharc.com and there's an input form and I'm sure you can track me down. If I say my like cell phone number out loud, then the AI bots will take it and I will never no, so I probably
Never
shouldn't do
stop
that.
getting spam. Yeah, no.
Yeah, or shoot me an email. I'm sure there's a way to I'm sure Sarah's figured out how to get my email onto her podcast somehow.
Yes, I
But
can put that in the description box for sure.
yeah, always love talking to builders. If nothing else, I always say, like I said earlier, if all you do is you learn about some cool technology and you're up to date on what's going on in home building tech, how could that hurt?
Yeah, only pros, only pros. Thank you, Connor. This was a very interesting conversation. It really brought together a lot of different concepts in my mind. So I hope that our listeners also enjoyed it. I'm sure that they did. I really appreciate you being here to share your expertise and all of your stories with us. So I will give you the very last word before we go. Is there anything else that you want to say to our listeners or anything that you want to leave them with? The floor is yours.
One of the things I kept hearing some people say is practice is over. So I think we're in a market condition right now where it's like we figure out who's really good and who's ready to play the but the market eventually is going to speed up again and the sales are going to come back. And where do you want to be when that happens? I started saying this, I started thinking about this a couple months ago, but it's gonna become my tagline. It's builders are either too busy making too much money to think about changing, or too poor not making enough money to think about changing. So if you want to be able to maximize the opportunity when the market turns around, when your market speeds up again, now is the time. Now's the time to start looking at those solutions. Because if you start trying to lay the sandbags when the river's already crested, it's too late. You won't catch up. Yeah, take a look, take a look at a bunch of technology while things are a little slower and figure out how you can best optimize it for your individual situation. And yeah, can't hurt just to have more knowledge. Always good to have more knowledge.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Connor. Thank you also to all of our listeners for being here with us today. Definitely jump over to the description box and grab those links for Connor. Check out Higharc. I've been all over their website recently. They've got a lot of really interesting things on there. So go check that out. And I hope to see you in our next episode. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.